I'm Dr. Steve Feldman, professor of dermatology at the Wake Forest University School of Medicine here in beautiful Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I want to talk to you about what you need to know about biosimilars in psoriasis. To start, let's understand what biologics are. These are some great drugs. They were revolutionary. Their biologics are large, very complex protein molecules. They've got carbohydrate on them. They've got tertiary and quaternary structure. They are so large and so complicated that they cannot be duplicated. Now, when they lose their patent life, you can't make a generic version of them, because you can't make perfect duplicates of them. You can make something similar, something very similar, what we would call a biosimilar. Now, some people worry that that's not good enough. They say that if the drug is not exactly the same, it should need all the testing that the originator had done. You should have to have 2 large phase 3 controlled trials for the disease of interest. Now, some biologics are approved for multiple diseases, and people who worry about biosimilars being less than identical think, well, I'd want to see 2 well-done phase 3 trials in my disease before I'm going to trust that the drug works the same. I want to see that done for efficacy, and I want to see long-term safety too. Here's the thing. Biologics, the innovator products, are so large, so complicated, they can't be duplicated by anybody, not even by the originator company. Every batch of the biologic is probably slightly different from every other batch. Now, they're very similar, but they're not identical to the original drug that was used in the trials. And we don't repeat all the trials for every batch of the innovator product. Biosimilars are kind of a lot like another batch of the innovator. The biosimilar is going to have the same protein sequence. It's going to be similar enough that it's going to bind its target, whether the target's TNF or interleukin 12, 13, 23, 17. It's going to bind that target with the same binding affinity to within a narrow range, possibly even a narrower range than for the different batches of the innovator drug. And in addition to binding its target, they're going to show in studies that the blood levels are identical, basically identical or highly similar over time, between the innovator drug and the biosimilar. Now, if it's in your body the same and it's binding the target the same, it's pretty much going to work the same. And that would be across all indications. But in addition to that, biosimilars typically do a large trial comparing their drug to the innovator. In some large trials showing that, sure enough, there's no magic in this world that, if it binds the same and if it's in the body the same, that it works the same in the clinical trial. And they'll show there's no significant differences. So the biosimilar should work just the same as another batch of the innovator drug. Now, there are some additional wrinkles to this. Probably the biggest wrinkle is that you're going to have patients who've been on their biologic for some time, and now they're going to get the biosimilar. And it's going to look different. The pen with the syringe may look different than what they're used to, and they're going to be nervous about it. And maybe they'll even have a headache and think, oh, I didn't get a headache with my other one. And they'll think the headache is from their biosimilar. But the biosimilar should be working in every bit the same way that their biologic does, their innovator drug did. And you should be prepared for some hand-holding. In addition, people lose efficacy over time. They may develop an anti-drug antibody to their originator biologic. Well, if they switch to a biosimilar and they develop an antibody at that point, they're going to blame the biosimilar. But the studies will be done that will show that the biosimilars don't have a different immunogenicity than the innovator drug, because either one can lose efficacy at some point. If it happens when they go on the biosimilar, they're probably going to blame the biosimilar, and you're going to need to do some hand-holding there. The innovator products, in my experience, have been wonderful about making sure patients have access to the drug. I don't know if the biosimilars are going to have the same support programs. They might. We all think that, with biosimilars bringing the cost down, patients will have greater access. I don't know that the cost is going to come down so much that the access is going to improve. We'll have to see how that does. I suspect that at first we might have some choice into whether we prescribe the innovator or other drugs. Of course, we're always going to have choice about what we could prescribe. I guess the question is, are we going to have any choice in what the insurer will pay for? Maybe initially, maybe the insurers will still cover the innovator product and we'll have to write a prescription for the biosimilar if we want. It may be that insurers will say, you can write a prescription for the innovator, but the only one we cover is this particular biosimilar. And then we might choose to write a prescription for that biosimilar because the patient wants their insurance company to pay for the drug. Biosimilars can do additional studies, a switching study showing that the drug works equally well when you switch back and forth from the innovator to the biosimilar. That's called interchangeability. And if they get the FDA interchangeable designation, then the pharmacist can switch to a biosimilar even if you write the prescription for the innovator drug. I don't mind if that happens. Right now, the pharmacist can switch from one batch of the innovator drug to another batch of the innovator drug without telling me. That's all totally fine with me. And if you can switch between different batches of the innovator with no problem, well, and without being worried about it, I'm not going to worry about switching between different batches of the innovator versus a biosimilar. The last thing I want to say is that if there is any difference between biosimilars and innovator drugs, my guess is those differences are swamped by differences in how patients handle the drugs. But patients are not always fully adherent to their treatments. And there's probably tremendous variation in how and when patients take their medicines. One of the questions I like to ask my patients on self-injected biologics is, are you keeping the injectors that you've accumulated refrigerated like you're supposed to? Now, they think I'm asking about refrigeration. I'm actually asking if they're taking it the way they're supposed to, because if they're taking it the way they're supposed to, the answer will be, well, I don't know what you're talking about, doc. I don't have any extras. But a lot of my patients tell me, yeah, they keep the extras refrigerated, which means I know they're not taking it the way they're supposed to. The bottom line is that if you have been comfortable having patients take the current batch of the innovator, if you haven't been worried about one batch versus another, then you should be comfortable prescribing biosimilars. Thank you for listening.